you ready?
Yeah.
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
He's a great guy.
Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHAL.
I'm honored to present Vice President and the future President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Oh, boy. That is hilarious. That is absolutely hilarious.
Just wait. He hasn't made it to the podium yet.
Oh, he's not at the podium yet. Okay.
Oh, there he is. There he goes.
Oh, we got to applaud him for getting all the way to the podium, I suppose. Oh, my goodness. So, Vice President Biden showed up somewhere yesterday, and as usual, Kissimmee, Florida, and as usual, I mean, that applause there, Shannon, that's so good. We should keep that as a sound effect for the show. Like for applause that exactly. For applause that if it were a lot more enthusiastic, you could potentially call it half-hearted if
Even
it got
the
a lot
golf
more
clap has
enthusiastic.
more enthusiasm.
Yeah, right, exactly. I wonder if it's not quite a slow clap, because a slow clap has a certain irony to it. It's actually intended to be actual clapping by people who are completely unmotivated by the thing they're clapping about. I mean, that's worse than if you took me to see Swan Lake. You know, it's just, all right. Anyway, it's such a strange election, isn't it? It's such a strange election. All the passion is about Trump, and I mean for him or against him. All of the strong feelings are about Trump. Hardly anybody gives a rat's behind about Joe Biden. And I actually saw a poll recently that said that a majority of people who are voting for Biden are doing it because they're voting against Trump, not because they're voting for Biden. What a weird situation. The whole thing is just weird. I have to say, if Biden wins, and he wins an election because people were voting against Trump rather than voting for him, it is really likely that the Democrats would get just buried 2 years later. The question is, how much damage will they do between now and then, which is part of the reason that it's so important that we do everything we can to try to keep the Senate, which is not going to be easy. And I'm not assuming that Trump is going to lose. I think he's still an underdog today. But I'm saying, regardless of what you think is going to happen there, we got to do everything we can to protect the Senate. Not going to be easy. Let me follow up, if I might, on Pat Woodard's newscast there. Congratulations to the Denver Nuggets. Wow. I was watching some of the game yesterday. In the second quarter, the Nuggets were down by 11 or 12, and I thought, all right, that's it's just they got them right where they want them. And I think actually one of the TV announcers said the same thing, because the Nuggets have this habit lately of getting down by double digits and storming back and winning, and they sure did. The game was almost tied at halftime. I want to say that L.A. Clippers were up by 2 at halftime. Long story short, the Nuggets beat the Clippers 104-89 yesterday. They absolutely crushed the Clippers yesterday. And it was, so you heard Pat Woodard say, the first team ever to win 2 playoff series in the same year after being down 3-1 in both of those series. Nikola Jokic became the first player in NBA playoff history to get a 20-plus rebound triple-double in a Game 7. So that guy was on fire, and the team was just tremendous. And so congratulations. I mentioned yesterday just, showing a little grit, showing a little standing up in the face of adversity and getting the job done when you need to get it done. We don't see that among our politicians, among members of Congress. We don't see it in so many places. Often we don't see it among kids these days. And this is going to sound not very nice, but I'm going to say it anyway. Part of the reason, obviously the main reason I wanted the Nuggets to win is because they're our hometown team, right? But there was just a little extra kind of sweetness to the Clippers losing, because the Clippers spend all their time on the sidelines of the game wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. And I talked about this yesterday. Whether or not I have an opinion on Black Lives Matter, and of course there are a lot of opinions to be had, depending on whether you're talking about the concept or the organization. Those are very different things. But in either case, as I said yesterday, I think I'm not alone. I don't want politics in my sports. And I like to think that I would say the same thing, if some team from Texas, some Republican place, if they were wearing T-shirts touting, Ronald Reagan, I wouldn't want that either. Probably wouldn't bother me as much as this, but I wouldn't want that either. It's sports. Just shut up and play. You want to make a difference, go out into your community and make a difference after the game. Anyway, we talked about that a lot yesterday. I won't do more of it now. Just congratulations to the Denver Nuggets for going to the Western Conference Finals. Game 1 against the Los Angeles Lakers with LeBron James will be Friday at 7 o'clock our time, and the broadcast, I believe, will be on TNT. So there you go with that. Back to politics for a second. I mentioned a couple of days ago that President Trump agreed to make himself available to ABC News for a town hall with people who supposedly are uncommitted voters. And they probably were. I don't know. It was yesterday. Joe Biden, who went out there in Kissimmee, Florida, for that rousing round of applause from the handful of folks who were still awake as Biden teetered over to the lectern. Can we get that sound again, Shannon? How did they react when the man they think is maybe the next president, when he showed up? What did that sound like? Right.
That sounds like one of our company's Zoom meetings.
I have a feeling the Nuggets got more applause after their win yesterday, and there were no fans in the building. So, anyway. So, ABC also asked Biden if he would make himself available to do one of these town halls, and they conveniently could not come up with a date that worked for both of them. Really? Like, Joe Biden can't find 2 hours to do a big national thing with George Stephanopoulos on ABC and subject himself to questions. And by the way, that the questions for the Democratic candidate and the behavior of the moderator with a Democratic candidate would be a lot easier and a lot more gentle than it was yesterday with Trump. And yet still Joe Biden can't do it. Bottom line for Biden's campaign, and I'm going to get to some sound from Trump yesterday, but bottom line, I think, for Biden's campaign is it's very simple. It's a much simpler calculation than you might think, right? It's easy to overthink this thing, right? Joe Biden is staying in his basement and, this strategy and that strategy, and bottom line is it's working for him, right? Joe Biden is hardly doing anything, and the polls are starting to move back in Joe Biden's direction a little bit. Not a lot, but a little. And pretty much almost every poll, has Joe Biden leading in almost every swing state. So they just feel like it's working for them, and they don't feel any great need to change. And they don't care whether voters would like to hear from them. They don't care about any of that, because the bottom line is that all that matters is winning. And I'm not even saying that as a complaint. It's basically true. All that matters is winning right now. That's just how it is. Right? If you were, okay, let's go to the bad analogy club. if you were the Nuggets, let's say you're the Denver Nuggets and somehow magically you get up a lot of points early in a game, or not even that early because we're late in the game now. Let me make my analogy not that terrible. And actually, we've all seen this in basketball, so it's probably not going to be as bad an analogy as I'd like. But you get later in a game, and one team is up by an amount that they feel like is a fairly comfortable lead. They feel like they don't need to play too aggressively, and they'll be able to hold on to this lead and win the game. And by the way, most of the time when they get in that situation, it's probably right. Not all the time. But most of the time, it's probably right. So what do? They spread out the court, and they just start passing the ball around the perimeter, right? Or a football analogy. Their team's up near the end of the game. They've got the ball, and their main goal is to just not give the other team the ball back. So what do? Is they just do running play after running play after running play with whatever running back is least likely to fumble. Also because with running plays, the clock doesn't stop. If you throw the ball and the receiver drops it, if the receiver doesn't catch it, the clock stops, and that gives the other guy more time. So this is what's going on with Joe Biden. He thinks he's got enough of a lead that he doesn't really need to do very much. To the extent that he has to do anything, it's really more like a hostage movie Proof of Life. Like, oh, look, he's not a wax figure. Or if he is a wax figure, he's a wax figure with fairly advanced motor technology that makes him move in a way that's nearly human. So we'll get him out there just enough so we can get that rousing round of applause in Florida. Can you remind us what that applause sounded like yesterday, Shannon? That applause for Joe Biden? Mostly it sounds like one guy. Anyway, so President Trump, though, partly because I actually think he likes talking, he likes hearing himself, he likes being on network TV, he likes thinking he's reaching lots of people, and also partly because his team is surely telling him that he's in some trouble with moderate, independent, or loosely affiliated voters. He did show up. And they did this town hall yesterday, and he was asked a few questions, and I want to see if I can share a little of this with you.
If you believe it's the president's responsibility to protect America, why would you downplay a pandemic that is known to disproportionately harm low-income families and minority communities?
Yeah. Well, I didn't downplay it. I actually, in many ways, I upplayed it in terms of action. My action was very strong. Yeah, because what I did was with China, I put a ban on. With Europe, I put a ban on. And we would have lost thousands of more people had I not put the ban on. So that was called action, not with the mouth, but in actual fact. We did a very, very good job when we put that ban on. Whether you call it talent or luck, it was very important. So we saved a lot of lives when we did that.
All right, so that's one example of an early question. Pretty rough question to start, you know. One of the interesting things that this sort of assumes a continuity of Trump's so-called playing it down, where the questioner says, you know, why did you play down a virus that is known to be more harmful to minorities, essentially? And the data does show minorities more likely to be hospitalized. I don't think it's a genetic thing about some particular physiology of African Americans or Hispanics. I think it's much more of an economic thing, and the fact that perhaps in less affluent communities, you may have more people living together in one house, and maybe parents and grandparents living with a family and that sort of thing. But a little bit unfair to say, you know, why did you downplay something that was known to, you know, to be more dangerous to minorities, when at least at the time that Trump made his statement about downplaying it, it wasn't known that the data would play out this way. That said, it's a very tough argument for Trump to make that he, to use his own words, that he upplayed it when everybody's heard him say, not only that he likes to downplay it, but that he wants to keep downplaying it because he doesn't want to cause a panic. He's in a tough spot because he's on tape saying what he said. All right, let's go to another back and forth between Trump and a questioner yesterday.
The statement is, though, make it great again. So historically, the African-American experience, especially in these ghettos that have been redlined, historically, these ghettos that have systemically been set up and treated the way that they have been, the conditions of the drugs, the guns, and everything else that actually create have not been seen. Some of the cycles continue to ensue, and we need to see, because you say again, we need to see when was that great, because that pushes us back to a time in which we cannot identify with such greatness. And I mean, you've said everything else about choking and everything else, but you have yet to address and acknowledge that there's been a race problem in America.
So if you go, well, I hope there's not a race problem. I can tell you there's none with me, because I have great respect for all races, for everybody. This country is great because of it. But when you go back 6 months and you take a look at what was happening, you can't even compare that with past administrations. When you look at income levels and a lot of things because of the job situation where they had the lowest income, the best unemployment numbers they've ever had, the black community by far. And that was solving a lot of problems. And you know what else it was? It was bringing people together. I was starting to get, just before this was, we were having a long run of success, I was starting to get calls from Democrats that...
All right, you get the idea. And President Trump does know what issues are best for him. The economy's certainly best for him. I don't know whether African-American voters would listen to that and say that's a good answer or not. I just want to share it with you. Here's one more.
I voted for you in 2016. I'm conservative, pro-life, and diabetic. I've had to dodge people who don't care about social distancing and wearing face masks. I thought you were doing a good job with the pandemic response until about May 1st. Then you took your foot off the gas pedal. Why did you throw vulnerable people like me under the bus?
Well, we really didn't, Paul. We've worked very hard on the pandemic. We've worked very hard. It came off from China. They should have never let it happen. And if you look at what we've done with ventilators and now, frankly, with vaccines, we're very close to having a vaccine. If you want to know the truth, the previous administration would have taken perhaps years to have a vaccine because of the FDA and all the approvals. And we're within weeks of getting it. You know, could be 3 weeks.
All right, you get the idea. We hear this conversation a lot. Again, that guy said he voted for Trump, and he's a conservative, pro-life Republican. It was an interesting event last night. We'll talk about it more later. Special guest next.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver.